I'm 29, and my daughter just turned 2 last weekend. That birthday party is the reason I'm writing this, because it revealed something so bizarre and violating that I still feel like I'm in some surreal nightmare. I had a gut feeling something was off with my mother-in-law the day we brought our baby home. Not anything dramatic, just little things. The way she corrected me every time I said my daughter's name. How she always said it slowly, like she was tasting something bitter. Or how she insisted on calling her Maddie when her name is Madeline, not Madison. At first, I brushed it off as generational differences or maybe just her having a nickname thing. But now I know it wasn't that simple. See, when Madeline was born, we sent out all the official paperwork to get her birth certificate, social security card, the usual. My husband, Eric, handled most of it. I was recovering from a rough delivery and didn't think twice when he said his mom offered to help by dropping off the forms at the county office since she was already going into town. That's where it all started, though I didn't realize it until 2 years later. This past weekend, we threw a party for Madeline's 2nd birthday. Family, friends, neighbors, lots of toddlers screaming over cake and balloons. Everything was going great until the cake arrived. I didn't even look at it at first. I was too busy chasing Madeline around while trying not to spill juice on my shirt. My sister-in-law walked into the backyard holding the cake box, and that's when I heard her say, "Oh, this is cute. Wait, is this a joke?" Everyone turned toward her as she opened the box. My stomach dropped when I saw it. The cake didn't say "Happy Birthday, Madeline." It said, "Happy Birthday, Madeline." I stood there, stunned. I thought maybe it was a bakery mistake. An innocent typo. Until my mother-in-law chimed in with a big, fake smile. "Oh, it's spelled the correct way now." Finally. I laughed nervously, thinking maybe she was joking. But she wasn't. Because what came next made my blood run cold. She said, loud enough for half the party to hear, "She's always been Madeline, honey. That's what's on her birth certificate." My brain short-circuited. What was she talking about? I turned to Eric, and he looked like a deer in headlights. I asked him, just flat out, what the hell she meant. And the look on his face confirmed it. That was the moment everything unraveled. I pulled Eric aside, practically dragging him into the kitchen while guests kept singing and clapping in the background like nothing had happened. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear myself think. I didn't even wait to close the door before asking him again, what the hell did his mom mean? He stared at me, completely frozen, and then muttered something I'll never forget. "I thought you knew." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Thought I knew what? That the name we picked together, the name we wrote in the announcement cards, the one embroidered on baby blankets and etched into my heart, wasn't even legally hers? That's when he finally admitted it. When his mom offered to drop off the paperwork after the hospital discharge, she told him she made a small correction because the clerk had misspelled the name. She said she fixed it so it was proper. Apparently, she'd always hated the way we spelled Madeline, with a Y-N. She said it looked trashy, and Madeline was more classic. But the worst part? Eric didn't stop her. He told me he didn't want to argue with her while I was still recovering, and figured we could just fix it later. "It's just a letter," he said, as if it was no big deal. Except it is a big deal. Because for the past 2 years, I've been calling my daughter by the name I thought we gave her, while this woman has been smugly pretending the real, legal name was hers all along. Every time she emphasized it, every Madeline on gifts and holiday cards, I thought she was just being condescending. I had no idea she'd literally rewritten part of my daughter's identity. I was so stunned, I didn't even respond. I just walked back outside, past the cake, past the family, and straight into the house again, this time locking myself in the bathroom. I cried. Not because of the name, but because of the betrayal. Eric knew. His mom orchestrated it. And nobody thought I deserved to know the truth. What else had they kept from me? That night, the party ended awkwardly. I didn't touch the cake. I barely looked at anyone. My MIL tried to act like she hadn't just dropped a nuclear bomb into my child's life, complimenting the decorations and patting herself on the back for helping raise sweet little Madeline. And Eric? He kept trying to talk, but I shut him down every time. Because I didn't trust a word coming out of his mouth anymore. And that was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up in the guest room with Madeline asleep beside me, her tiny hand curled around mine like a lifeline. I kept staring at her face, her little nose scrunched in sleep, her chest rising and falling peacefully, and all I could think about was how violated I felt. This wasn't just a name. It was ours. It was the first decision we made as parents. It was whispered to her when she was born, written in cards, engraved on a bracelet from my mom. It was a part of our story. And now it felt like a joke. I didn't speak to Eric the next morning. I couldn't. Every time I looked at him, all I saw was a man who let his mother override his wife on something so deeply personal. And then lied by omission for 2 years. By noon, he finally broke the silence. Said he called the county office and confirmed it. Our daughter's legal name was, in fact, Madeline. Not Madeline. His mother had signed an amended form on our behalf saying we'd made a clerical error. And the clerk, relying on the paperwork and her calm authority, processed it without question. I wanted to scream. He tried to spin it like he had no idea it was going to be permanent. That he assumed I'd notice eventually, and we'd just fix it together. But he never said a word. Not when we applied for her pediatrician, not during passport registration, not when we filled out daycare forms. Nothing. He just went along with it. Like I was the one imagining things. That's when I knew I couldn't trust either of them anymore. And then came the real punch to the gut. When I said I wanted to change it back, legally, officially, he hesitated. Not because he disagreed with me, but because he didn't want to start a war with his mom. That's when I realized this wasn't just a name issue. This was a loyalty issue. And my husband had already picked a side. The next morning, I called the county office myself. I needed to hear it from someone who didn't share DNA with my husband. And sure enough, the clerk confirmed everything. The name on the birth certificate was Madeline. Not a typo. Not a placeholder. It had been legally amended just days after the initial submission, by my mother-in-law, acting under the pretense that she was helping us correct an error. They had the paperwork on file. And worse? It was notarized. I asked for a copy to be mailed to me immediately. When I hung up, I was shaking. Not with sadness anymore, but with white-hot rage. She'd forged our signatures. She had someone notarize a lie. And somehow, nobody ever questioned it. I felt like I was living in some alternate reality where I didn't matter, where my voice, my role as a mother, was optional. I confronted Eric again, this time with fire in my chest. I laid it all out, the forgery, the notarization, the deliberate manipulation. I expected him to be shocked, maybe even furious at his mom. But instead, he just sat there, rubbing his face like he was tired. Like I was the problem again. He didn't defend what she did. But he didn't condemn it either. He said something like, she just wanted her granddaughter to have a dignified name. She was trying to help. Help? How was stealing my child's name helping? That's when I packed a bag. Not a symbolic one. Not a threat. A real bag, with clothes for me and Madeline, her favorite stuffed bunny, our documents, and a folder I labeled evidence. Because I wasn't going to sit in a house where my motherhood was treated like a formality. As I zipped it up, Eric stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me like I was being irrational. Like I was blowing this all out of proportion. I didn't say a word to him. I just picked up my daughter, kissed her forehead, and walked out. And just like that, the house we built together, the one I thought was filled with trust, felt like a stranger's. I moved in with my sister that evening. She didn't even ask questions when she saw my face, just hugged me tight, took Madeline from my arms, and started running a bath for her. The moment the door shut behind us, I finally let myself fall apart. Over the next few days, I filed a police report. Yes, an actual report. Forgery is a felony, and I needed it on record, even if I didn't press charges yet. My lawyer friend walked me through how to request the birth certificate change through the courts and what kind of documentation I'd need to prove the original name was not Madeline, that the amendment wasn't requested by us. That's when the real insanity began. Because while I was collecting documents, lining up emails, baby announcements, and even the framed print we made for her nursery with her name spelled Madeline, my mother-in-law started posting on Facebook. She wrote a long, syrupy post about her sweet granddaughter Madeline, how she had chosen the name to honor her own grandmother, and how sometimes a mother just knows best, even when it's not her own child. The comments were flooded with likes. Family friends praised her grace and commitment to family tradition. A few even joked that I should be grateful to have such a classy name in the family. She was rewriting history, and people were buying it. Eric saw the post too. He sent me a single text, "Please don't make this into a legal thing. Let's fix it quietly. She didn't mean harm." I stared at the screen in disbelief. He was still defending her. Still prioritizing her comfort over my rights as a mother. Still acting like the woman who forged a legal document about our child just needed a hug and a stern talking to. That's when I made my decision. If he wouldn't stand with me, I'd stand alone. I called the lawyer the next morning and started the petition to have Madeline's legal name restored. And I also filed for temporary custody, because if my husband couldn't recognize his mother's behavior as dangerous, then I couldn't trust him to keep our daughter safe from her influence. It wasn't just about a name anymore. It was about control. And I was taking mine back. I didn't expect the court process to be fast. I knew this would be a grind. But I wasn't prepared for how emotionally draining it would be to have to prove I was the real mother of a child I carried, birthed, and raised for 2 years. The legal system is slow, but it's thorough. We had to provide copies of everything, from ultrasound photos labeled Madeline, to the hospital discharge summary, to the original email chain between Eric and me where we discussed name options while I was still pregnant. I found one where he literally typed, Madeline with a Y feels right. It's softer. That line hit me like a ton of bricks. At the same time, my sister helped me dig into the notary who signed the amended birth certificate. Turns out it was a friend of my MIL's. Small town, part-time notary with a sketchy reputation. She'd notarized the form saying Eric and I had jointly requested the spelling correction, despite us never appearing in front of her. Which, of course, is illegal. Meanwhile, Eric was spiraling. He sent long, guilt-tripping texts every night. Not about what had happened, but how I was blowing it up, embarrassing the family, and alienating him from his daughter. He started using language that sounded oddly like his mother's voice, words like disrespectful, vindictive, and overdramatic. I started realizing how much her influence ran beneath the surface. But here's where it got worse. I got a call from the daycare director. She was confused because they received a form from Eric, signed and notarized, that requested they start using the name Madeline on all documents and communications. He hadn't even told me. He was trying to overwrite everything I was doing behind my back, again, this time with the help of a signature and a seal. The director refused to follow through until she spoke to me, thank God. That's when I realized, this wasn't a man torn between his wife and his mother. This was a man who had chosen a side. And it wasn't mine. After the daycare incident, something inside me hardened. I wasn't grieving anymore, I was preparing for war. The lines were drawn, and Eric had stepped over them willingly. The next move came swiftly. My lawyer filed a cease and desist letter addressed to both my MIL and Eric, ordering them to stop using the name Madeline in any legal, educational, or medical setting until the court made a ruling. The letter also cited the forgery investigation, which, by then, had gained traction. That must have shaken them, because the silence that followed was loud. No more texts. No surprise visits. Nothing. Until 2 days later, my sister came into the living room holding her phone, eyes wide. My MIL had posted again. A long-winded, self-pitying essay about how some women don't understand the weight of family legacy and how she was just trying to preserve a beautiful name before it was erased by temporary bitterness. This time, she included a baby photo of Madeline, with a caption that said, Madeline, 2 days old. My legacy lives on. I lost it. That post was shared nearly 400 times in less than 24 hours. I got texts from distant cousins, old coworkers, even the nurse who helped deliver Madeline, asking if everything was okay. The audacity of it all was suffocating. This woman had erased me from the narrative and painted herself as the noble grandmother safeguarding tradition while I was made out to be some unstable mother on a revenge spree. And Eric? Still no word. I finally texted him one sentence, you either take that post down, or I go public. No reply. No edit. No removal. So I made a burner account and posted the screenshots. Her original messages mocking the trashy Y spelling, the notarized forgery, the fake daycare form, and my birth announcement from 2 years ago, complete with timestamp and name clearly spelled Madeline. I didn't include names. But everyone local knew. And once it started spreading, the cracks started showing. My MIL's post vanished within hours. But the damage was done. Because the next day, my phone rang. It was Eric. And what he said chilled me more than anything yet. He told me he was going to fight for full custody. Because he no longer believed I was a stable influence. The second I hung up, my hands were shaking. Not out of fear, but fury. Full custody? After everything he and his mother had done? After months of manipulation, betrayal, and literal forgery, he thought I was the unstable one? He was weaponizing the same narrative his mother had been pushing online, casting me as erratic, emotional, unfit. It was calculated, cold, strategic, but it was also incredibly stupid. Because what he didn't realize was that I'd already been documenting everything. Every message, every voicemail, every notarized form, screenshot, and social media post. I even had a statement from the daycare director backing up my claim that he tried to change our daughter's name again, behind my back. And more importantly, I had people. Real people. Friends, family, neighbors who'd watched me raise Madeline day in and day out. Who knew I wasn't the villain in this story? Who saw what Eric and his mother were doing from the outside? Still, the emotional toll was brutal. I couldn't focus on work. I was sleeping in 2-hour stretches. Every noise outside made me wonder if someone had sent CPS to my sister's door. I felt paranoid, exhausted, and like I was being hunted in my own life. Then came the court summons. He was actually going through with it. Full custody, citing parental alienation and emotional instability. He attached the burner post I had made about his mother, claiming it proved I was vengeful and obsessed with public shaming. He even included a statement from his mother saying she believed I was delusional and potentially dangerous to the child's mental development. It was unreal. He was trying to use the chaos they created as evidence against me. But what he didn't expect was that I would walk into court more prepared than he ever could have imagined. And he definitely didn't expect who walked in with me. When we walked into the courtroom, it was like a scene from a movie. Eric was already seated with his lawyer, looking smug, flipping through a stack of documents. His mother sat behind him, dressed like she was going to brunch, smiling at everyone like this was just some routine family event. But when my lawyer and I entered, with 2 surprise witnesses, Eric's expression changed instantly. The first was the notary. Yes, the same one who had falsely notarized the forged name change paperwork. Under pressure and facing possible charges, she'd agreed to give a statement. My lawyer had contacted her directly and explained what she'd become entangled in. Turns out, my MIL had lied to her too, claimed we were in the hospital and couldn't sign in person, but that she was authorized to act for us. The notary admitted she'd been too trusting and hadn't verified any of it. She gave a full statement of the deception and her regrets. The second witness? The county clerk who handled the name amendment. She had no idea we hadn't made the request ourselves, but once shown the documents and my proof, she agreed to testify that the name change had been pushed through without proper follow-up or direct parental confirmation. She also provided a record of Eric's mother dropping off the paperwork in person, alone. That's when Eric started fidgeting. His lawyer leaned in, whispering fast, but it was already too late. Everything he built this custody case on was crumbling. My lawyer laid out the full story, from the forged paperwork, to the daycare incident, to the social media harassment, and finally the coordinated campaign to paint me as unstable. And when it came time for my turn to speak, I didn't cry. I looked the judge in the eye and said, "This isn't about a name. It's about someone who has repeatedly disrespected me as a mother, and a husband who stood by and watched it happen. I didn't start this war. I just finally decided to fight back." There was silence in the room. Even Eric looked down. Even his mother stopped smiling. The judge didn't rule that day. But we walked out knowing the truth was finally in the open. And I walked out holding my daughter's hand, her real name echoing in my head with every step. Madeline. Not Madeline. 2 weeks later, the court ruling came in. The judge rejected Eric's request for full custody. In fact, the court granted me primary custody, with Eric receiving supervised visitation until he completed a court-ordered parenting course. The judge called the forged documents a serious breach of trust and legal ethics and cited Eric's willful complicity as deeply troubling. But the real victory came when the judge approved my request to restore my daughter's legal name to what it had always been in my heart, Madeline. Hearing that verdict read out loud felt like breathing after months underwater. There was one final twist, though. After the ruling, Eric's lawyer apparently dropped him as a client. I heard from a mutual friend that his mother had pushed him to countersue, convinced they could appeal the name change on moral grounds. The lawyer wanted no part of it. As for my MIL, she disappeared from public life. No more Facebook essays. No more proud grandmother posts. It was like the entire campaign collapsed once the courts labeled her behavior as what it truly was, manipulative, deceitful, and unfit for influence over a child. Eric tried calling me once. No apology, just more excuses. I didn't pick up. I blocked him after that. Now, Madeline and I are rebuilding. I've moved back into our old house. She's thriving in her new daycare, where they proudly call her by her real name. I painted her room over, scrubbed every trace of her grandmother's touch from the walls, reclaimed everything that was stolen from me, quietly, steadily, without fanfare. There's no fairy tale ending here. Just healing. Some people never apologize. Some families never change. But what I've learned is that protecting your child means drawing hard lines, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. And now, when I tuck Madeline into bed and whisper her name, it feels right again. Because this time, it's hers. All hers. And no one can take it from us again.